Hello, I'm Wade Hudson.
I'm Cheryl Willis Hudson. Welcome to another segment of Just Us and. Today we are chatting with our friend and talented illustrator, author, Eric Velasquez.
Eric was born in Spanish Harlem and grew up in Harlem. He got his start in the industry illustrating book jackets and creating interior art. His career as a children's book illustrator began in 1997 with the publication of The Piano Man, written by Debbie Chocolate. Since then, Eric has illustrated many books for young people, including Schomburg, The Man Who Built a Library, written by Carole Boston Weatherford. And this title has garnered rave reviews and also won the We Need Diverse Books Walter Award. Eric also illustrated My Friend Maya Loves to Dance, written by Cheryl Hudson. And he's written many, many other books, including Grandma's Gifts, Looking for Bongo, and Octopus Stew. Welcome, Eric, to another segment of our Just Us Books and.
Wow, well, thank you, Wade. It's great to be here with you and Cheryl, my old friends. I've known you guys now for quite some time now, so this is it feels like we're visiting.
Yeah, it's good to be able to chat with you. Eric, when did you first discover you had a gift for art? And once you discovered that you had that gift, how did you nurture it?
Wow, so that starts pretty early for me. I started drawing around the age of 7, and my mom would have these sketchbooks for me, and we had pencils, crayons, watercolors. She always had them available for me. So as I progressed, with my interest, I never had to look far to find, more pencils, colored pencils, watercolors. They seemed to for my young mind to magically appear. And it was my mom who just, had them ready from as my curiosity would develop.
What you've been drawing for then a long, long time.
Very long time.
Your illustration style is realistic. Could you explain a little bit about your technique and your creative process?
Okay, so one thing that's always been really important for me is that the people look like people that I know. So for me, there's one of the greatest compliments that I could receive is someone opens one of my books and says, "Hey, that looks like my Uncle Louis," or "That looks like my godfather." That to me is exactly what I'm striving for. That people can see themselves, portrayed, on the pages that I illustrate. In terms of my process, I could share with you some of the photos.
Oh, yes, please do.
Great.
Okay, so I'll have to do a screen share. Bear with me. Okay. And let's start here. Mm-hmm. So, can you see that?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
yes.
So this is my one of my newest books, Octopus Stew, that I wrote and illustrated. And this is the building in Spanish Harlem where I was born. So those top 2 floors, the very top floor was where my parents lived, and right below was where my grandmother lived. Mm. These are my parents, Carmen Lidia and Chu, and they're both from Puerto Rico. And that's me in the middle. And that's around the time I began drawing.
Cute.
And I loved dressing up as Batman as a child. And my grandmother would actually allow me to dress like this all throughout the year, with the understanding that if someone were to knock on the door, I had to take off my outfit, because my grandmother didn't want me they want the world to know that she had a fool for a grandson. And for the book that I illustrated, Schomburg, The Man Who Built a Library, written by the great Carole Boston Weatherford, I'll show you guys. These are some of the sketches that I produced in order to get to the cover. So this is one of the few times on that first sketch to the left, I only did one. I figured this is a one-shot deal, presented it to the art director over at Candlewick, and they're like, nah, not feeling it. So I produced the second one. I figured, this is it, Schomburg, The Man Who Built the Library. And not quite. And then the third one was, I finally asked them, well, what do you want to see? And they said, well, we want to see him with some books. So that's how that one came about. And that one they liked. That was the one that was accepted. And then from there, as I was running out of time, I had to get my friend to take a quick picture of me in my backyard with the books. And the old Norman Rockwell trick down there at the bottom to simulate the walking.
Wow.
So this is the initial underdrawing that I do with pencil on a large sheet of watercolor paper. This is Fabriano 300-pound hot press paper, to be precise. And I begin with an underpainting, and this is like with like acrylic washes with acrylic paint at first. And then I move on to the oil paint, and now I always paint the thing that's furthest away first, and that's the sky and the buildings. See the pants and the sidewalk coming in. And this is pretty much how it looks as it's finished. Okay.
That was going to be actually my next question. What was the process like working with Carole Boston Weatherford on both the manuscript, but also I'm curious as an art director to know how you worked with art directors at your publisher. A lot of aspiring authors and illustrators don't know that there are lots of revisions and changes in that process. So can you talk a little bit about that as well?
Yes, well, that's one of the things that you have to anticipate and not see it as, let's say, a failure or a shortcoming. You want the book to be as good as it can possibly be, and that it can convey all the, let's say, the messages that the book is supposed to convey. So there are things that as an illustrator, you're probably not going to get, or you're going to lose sight of, because we get really involved, let's say, with the technical aspect, and sometimes might forget that we're still conveying like a story, and there might be a detail or two that might be off. So, I welcome the comments that come in from the art director and the team at the publishing house, because I want the book to be as good as possible and effective. Some people, I teach at FIT, I teach book illustration, and I noticed that a lot of the students are sometimes upset or offended when you point out something that's not accurate, or a mistake, or one arm shorter than the other kind of thing. And I have to explain to them that you want this art to be as good as possible. And so you have to be more welcoming of the comments. So, and that's it's hard. It's even hard for me at times. I'm not going to say that it's I always welcome it with a smile, because it does mean more work. But I'm committed to the work.
In the process.
Yeah.
In the process, yes.
Eric, talk about how much research is involved. Because I know when you did Cheryl's book, illustrated Cheryl's book, you did a lot of research, and you actually went to a dance studio where you took photographs. Can you just talk about how much research really goes into the process of creating illustrations for books?
Well, that part of the process can sometimes take up to like between 1 to 3 months, just research alone. My friend Maya loves to dance. Yes, Cheryl and I went to the dance studio. I believe that's the one where you had gone to as a child, Cheryl. Was it, or nearby, right?
Well, in our community, it's very much like the one I went to when I was a kid.
But it's really important that as an illustrator, I get a sense of exactly what it is that I'm trying to do. So sometimes I jokingly say I have to become an expert on that subject. So in the case of my friend Myers loves to dance, we spent about 5 hours in that dance studio. We set up all the shots, and there were some scenes where they said the little girls couldn't actually, it was like the moves were too advanced for the little girls. So that's where the magic of illustration
Right. It was right there.
Yeah.
But aside from that, I also collected hundreds of photos of ballerinas. I attended a few ballets to really get a sense of what those performances were like, and to understand like the lighting. In terms, let's say now in other projects like the Schomburg book, that took a good 3 months in terms of research. I read a lot of his writings, went to the Schomburg Center, spent about 3 hours at the Schomburg Center doing a lot of research. There were photos there that are not available online. And once again, having to become an expert, you know, on the life of Schomburg, you know, so that I could put all that into the work.
It shows.
Now, Eric, Grandma's Records is described as an autobiographical picture book. It's about growing up in Harlem, and you call it as a tribute to your grandmother. Can you just talk a little, because that was also your first effort at writing and illustrating a book. Can you just talk about that process of doing it, and also the meaning of this book to you?
Well, that was or that book is always going to be as near and dear to my heart. I did want it to be a tribute to my grandmother, who I believe really nurtured a lot of that, let's say, my creativity. You know, as long as I did my homework, she would allow me to stay in my costume and I would draw. And the interesting thing about that relationship was that unless I showed her what I was working on, she would pretty much give me like my space, which was, you know, in hindsight, I see that was like a really important part of my development, because I never got the sense that I was drawing to impress her or to impress anyone. I was just pretty much drawing to impress myself. So unless I really said, hey, you know, Wella, look at this, she would not like look over my shoulder. Now, having said that, she sewed. And she was very intense about her sewing process, you know, with the fabric, and it had to be just right. But once again, I didn't interfere with her process. So I learned respect, let's say, but from her modeling behavior that way. So when she was working on you know, sewing, and she would make all her clothes and make clothes for my mom, but to her it was a very serious endeavor. I wouldn't interrupt her. And so the same thing for me. So I wanted to do a book really that caught the feeling of what it was like those summers that I spent with my grandmother. And then what we would enjoy would be just listening to her music, you know, old records. And then of course that day where the musicians come to visit, that became a very special part of that particular summer.
Is she still with us?
No, unfortunately, she passed in 1983, but let us say she is still with us.
Yeah.
She's alive in Grandma's Gift. She's alive in Looking for Bongo, and she's alive in Octopus Stew.
So I was going to ask you, the next thing after Grandma's Records was Grandma's Gifts, and what was the significance of that? I know you talk about your development as an illustrator and inspiration from both your grandmother and your mother.
Well, for Grandma's Gift, I wanted to show, you know, the connection to art. So in Grandma's Records was our connection to music. And then in Grandma's Gift, we go to the museum. And I see the portrait of Juan de Pareja painted by the great Diego Velazquez, no relation. But I was very inspired by that painting and the realism of that painting. And then for Christmas, you know, people from Puerto Rico, they make pasteles, which is like a traditional Puerto Rican dish that originates in West Africa. It's a lot of ground provisions, you know, and meat, and it's bundled together in a nice little package, and you boil it, and it resembles a gift, let's say. So I wanted to share those two aspects, let's say, of my life and work in Grandma's Gift.
So you went from music to art to cuisine, high cuisine.
Yes, absolutely.
Eric, let's talk a little bit about your dual heritage, Afro-Puerto Rican, and the impact that it has had on your art, but also on your worldview and how you see yourself.
Wow, that's a that's a little question, Wade. But yes, it has impacted my life greatly in that I've had to assume, let's say, 3 identities. Let's say. So at home, we were Afro-Puerto Rican.
Right.
And so we spoke Spanish, ate rice and beans and all the wonderful foods of the Puerto Rican cuisine. And then to go to school, I had to, let's say, assume the identity of just like an African American, because all our friends were, African American. So to be accepted, I had to sort of adopt, let's say, even the like a dialect. And then, of course, the third identity is just American, in terms of the literature and the film and music. So it's almost like having three identities.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think the beauty for me is that now at this stage, I'm able to tell the world, yes, I'm Afro-Puerto Rican. I'm a descendant of Africans that were dropped off from Puerto Rico, but we're all the same here. When I travel throughout the Caribbean, I see people that look just like me. Haven't been to Africa yet, but hope to. And I'm expecting to see lots of cousins and brothers and uncles and aunts there.
Well, we know that you went to, you're talking about a worldview and people who grew up in Harlem. You recently visited the home site of James Baldwin in France.
Absolutely.
What was that experience like?
Wow, that was a very moving experience for me. When I first read Sonny's Blues, and realized that it took place on 114th Street, and I grew up on 113th Street, it really moved me that James Baldwin was writing about a place that was really near to where I was living. So what I did throughout the years, I would try to track where in New York, Baldwin had lived, where in Harlem, and then in the Village. And the one place that had eluded me was, France, right? Provence. So when we had an opportunity to go about 3 years ago, we visited the home of James Baldwin that was had fallen into disrepair, and it was about to be demolished. And they were going to put up a like a bread and breakfast. It was going to be like a cul-de-sac, but the idea that we got there, and it was a group of painters. We were traveling through. We went to Paris. We went to the south of France, but that we got there just before that the home was going to be demolished. It was a very emotional moment for me because it felt as though I got there just in the nick of time, and I did feel, let's say, his presence there. And it was a really moving experience for me. I mean, I can't really express it enough. I think I wasn't prepared for the question, to be honest.
But that's okay, because it really ties into your creativity and the path that you've taken over the last more than 20 years that you've been illustrating books in this industry. So
closer to 35 years.
All right. Telling on yourself. So what's the things that you've seen so far in the industry over the years that you've been working as an illustrator?
So what was the first part of the question, Cheryl?
What's the biggest change that you've seen in the industry, in the children's book industry, or the art world?
Well, there have been quite a few changes. I aside from the way we work and communicate with our art directors, which is now a large part of it is all online. Let's say we communicate by email and, mostly that as opposed to in person. But of course, now the diversity in terms of the books, which is a fantastic thing. I grew up at a time where there are very few books that had images of boys and girls that looked like me. So I had a very hard time even finding an interest in the reading material. So it's one of the reasons why I wanted to become an illustrator and ultimately an author is because I didn't see enough books that spoke to me personally. And so now that I see this wonderful diversity, when I do school visits, and see the look on the kids' faces, especially the kids that look like me, not just the Afro-Latinos, but, just the kids that look like me, or kids that let's say, we used to say the word nerdy back in the day, but, kids that love comic books and they love superheroes. I totally identify with them. That's regardless of race. But the diversity that's out there now, even with this wonderful, the graphic novels also that have come into play. When I started doing children's books, I proposed the idea of formatting one of my books as a graphic novel because I love comic books so much, and I remember being told that had no place in children's books.
Yeah.
And so now to see this very same publisher that shall remain nameless now publishing graphic novels, it's just amazing. So I'm really excited about the industry and where we're at now, and just look forward to the next 35 years of publishing.
Yeah, I know, Eric, and the trip that you made to France, I believe E.B. Lewis was on that trip. Maybe Jerry Craft.
Jerry Craft, yes.
Yeah. Can you just talk about how the community of artists or illustrators or books for children sort of support each other? You guys encourage each other, and I know you stay in contact with each other. I don't think people realize that, how much you really are there for each other. Can you just talk about that a little bit?
Well, that's one of the most important parts. I don't think I would be doing children's books had not been for really good friends. Jerry Pickney, who was a mentor very early on, and James Ransom, who basically taught me how to create a book dummy.
Mm-hmm.
I was embarking on like my third book when I met him, and he asked me, "So have you started a book dummy yet?" And I like, "What's that?" So he's such a sweet person. He just said, "What are you doing Wednesday? Just come up to the house and I'll show you a couple of book dummies." And the irony is that that's what I teach now at FIT. So I owe it pretty much to him. But yeah, we do have a very strong community. We keep each other up at night, talking all throughout the night when we're pulling all-nighters. I'm very close with quite a few of the artists, including Jerry Craft, who delivered the most amazing book, The Blue Kid, won the Blueberry this year. Was part of the trip to France, and it was great going through the Louvre with him and sharing some of my favorite paintings with him and the rest of the painters. And then seeing that he said he got a lot out of it and was able to put that into the work, compositionally and in terms of, color choices and stuff like that. But yeah, it's very, very important. You can't exist in a vacuum in this industry. You need friends. You need support.
So is that, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So is that the kind of advice, would you give that, or can you give some tips then to aspiring artists? We know that you teach, but can you give some tips to aspiring creators of books for children?
Yes, well, I actually do give that advice to my students, that it's important to kind of create a community of friends or just like-minded people that can help each other with information, and just to support. If you're having a good day or a bad day, you can share that with someone who, could understand, let's say, the world that you're in. It's a very complex world that we kind of travel in publishing. We live in this vacuum where I stay in my studio for like months on end, and then I teach, and then let's say I'll do school visits, and even with that, you need advice. You can't exist in a vacuum, basically.
That's great advice.
So what are you working on now? Any new projects that we can look?
Quite a few new projects. So right now I'm working on a book titled Mambo Mucho Mambo. Let me see, and I can do a screen share. Let's see if I can share the screen here. Okay, so let's do this. going back. So that's my dad telling the story of octopus stew, basically.
Okay,
That's what
yeah,
that
yeah,
is.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's a great book.
Yeah.
And that's the actual octopus that he prepared for us. That's what octopus
Uh-huh.
stew looks like on the plate when it's served up over rice and green bananas. That's
Right, right. Oh, wow.
it. These are some of the sketches.
Hmm.
That's a little bit of the book dummy that I talked about a little earlier.
Right.
That James Ransom had a big part in helping me
Okay.
create. Let's see. This is what it looks like in the book dummy. That's the finished drawing. Going back to the process.
Beautiful.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And that's the finished painting as it appears in the book. So the newest books, right? This came out in February 2020, right before the pandemic, was Ruth Objects, The Life of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, written by Doreen Rappaport.
Right.
Strong Voices also came out during the pandemic, 15 American Speeches Worth Knowing, edited by the great Tanya Bolden, with a foreword by Cokie Roberts.
Wow.
And this is coming out August 4th. She Was the First, The Trailblazing Life of the great Shirley Chisholm by Catherine Russell, who I had the pleasure of meeting when I was in high school. So this is the coming up in a few weeks.
Great.
Okay.
How long does it take you to do this? This is a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, yes. But this is what I love doing. I love the research. I love learning about these people. Like in terms of Shirley Chisholm, I met her briefly when I was in high school. We participated in a contest, and one of the prizes was we got our artwork printed, and then got a chance to meet her in Brooklyn while she was delivering a speech. And so, and her advice was stay in school and work hard. So I thank her for that.
Well, Eric, we're just about at the end of this part of the interview, but we want to go on to a lightning round, and that's
lightning round.
Yeah, yes, get ready. Lightning. So we asked just a few questions, and if you can give us the first answer that comes to mind, okay?
Oh boy.
You ready? Why is everybody so scared about this lightning? Okay, what's the favorite book that you have created?
I would always say Grandma's Records.
Okay.
Great.
And who has influenced you the most?
I would say Tom Feelings. Absolutely, yes.
What's your favorite dish?
I would say pasteles or octopus stew.
So when we are not in this pandemic mode, what is a good night out for Eric?
Oh, well, that would mean going to perhaps Jazz at Lincoln Center and seeing one of my favorite jazz musicians perform, followed by dinner at this wonderful bar, a restaurant called Guantanamera that serves Cuban cuisine, and perhaps dancing at SOBs to our favorite Cuban band. And this is Elizabeth and myself. That would be the perfect night.
That's a nice night out. When you're not working on book projects or speaking to students, what are you most likely to be doing?
We mentioned talking to students and working on book projects. There's something else to life. Probably maybe at the movies or listening to music.
Right.
Yes.
Good
Okay.
answer.
Well, listen, we're at the end of the interview. This has been fantastic, Eric. You shared so much really pertinent and good information. And we want to thank you, man. And hopefully when this pandemic is over, we'll get a chance to hook up again and maybe have dinner.
Yes. Maybe have some Cuban food or some Puerto Rican food.
We would love it. We would love it. We would love it.
Good.
So thank
Cheryl and Wade, always a pleasure to see you guys. And thank you. And also thank you for your contribution to the publishing world, Just Us Books. You guys are pillars in this community. And I also include both of you in that, in my circle, seeing you guys at the Harlem Book Fair and being able to share with you guys over the years has been the joy of my life. So I want to thank you guys also for your contribution to my world and the world of publishing. You know, we're all happy to have you.
Eric. Thank you. Thank you. And we want to thank our viewers for tuning in, and we ask you to join us for the next segment of Just Us and, when we will chat with those who create the books that we read, and also with those who help to get the books in the hands of the readers. Remember, good books make a difference. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cheryl and Wade. Thank you.
Thank you.